Hi, this is Steve Gillmor, and welcome to the Gillmor Gang. It's a Sunday in May, and it's the second day after the iPad 3G shipped. So I'll be talking to, I don't know, Seth Goldstein. Welcome.
Thanks, Steve.
Do you have an iPad 3G?
I have an iPad. I don't have an iPad 3G.
Okay, and Andrew Keene, you don't have an iPad
No.
0G, right?
Yeah, well, you don't pay me to appear on the show, so I can't afford one.
Well, what show does pay you that you could afford one?
I don't know. You tell me, I'll go on it.
All right. So we're waiting on, I believe, Kevin Marks, although I have not been able to raise him from whatever crypt he's in at the moment. And Robert Scoble is not available. He just called from Israel, and he's in a noisy room with lousy Wi-Fi. It sounds like normal. So we'll make this a quick show. Seth, give us your take on the last 2 weeks. We've had a lot of pretty interesting stuff in the social media arena.
I was at Chirp and I was at F8, and what did I learn? I don't know what I learned yet, but I learned that Facebook is swallowing, and that
Swallowing what?
swallowing the internet, and that Twitter's not sure it wants to be a business yet.
Isn't that the story with Twitter for since day one, or even before?
They keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and so they're sort of like ham.
Can you move a little closer to your microphone? Yeah.
Sure.
You're sort of dropping in and out a little. Go ahead. Go ahead. Say it again.
I was just saying they're like Hamlet. They're having sort of an existential crisis as to whether or not they're willing to do what it takes to become a business, and the attitude around the developer ecosystem reflects that.
So, and then Facebook?
Facebook is awesome. The food was much better at F8 than at Twitter, which was surprising to me. It's the former chef from Google.
Okay, well, this is why we get the big bucks for all the real value that we provide. The food's better, and nothing much is going on.
Variety.
Say again?
There was more variety of different kinds of food.
Uh-huh. And was there a preference for fried food, or was it all boiled?
There was a barbecue station. There was a Chinese station. There was some vegan options as well. There was even a strawberry shortcake station, but most of the strawberries were gone by the time I got there.
I say, for some reason, Andrew, you're making your every noise is amplified. Are you putting your hands on your machine lovingly, or what's going on here?
No hands.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Andrew?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. Basically, don't move. That's perfect. Andrew Keene, what are your thoughts about the amazing world of technology? Do you have anything that you want to talk about today?
I want to know who's going to give me the money to buy an iPad.
What kind of a business model is that, where you stand around on a street corner and wait for somebody to come along and give you some hardware?
You've got this huge audience. There must be someone out there that's willing to give me $800 to do something for them.
Well, we'll see by the end of the show. I think I have a feeling what the answer will be, but we can. So seriously, Andrew,
funny?
what do you?
That was serious.
Yeah, I understand. When you go on the road, as you do frequently, and do speaking engagements, what is it that you talk about?
I don't talk about the food. I eat the food. I talk about. It's a good question. I'm coming to I was in Washington D.C. at the World Copyright Day, talking about copyright. You know, and then I'm going to the Personal Democracy Forum to talk about personal democracy. I talk about whatever they want me to talk about.
So, what is the basic shtick that you're rolling out this year? Do you have a new book?
Well, I'm writing one. I don't have it yet.
You haven't really committed to the theme, right?
I have committed to the theme.
Okay, what is that?
It's called Digital Vertigo, and it's about it's about social media.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, it's like, I think what Facebook's doing is actually kind of, it's easier to write once I've seen what Facebook's doing, because as Seth says, they're taking over the world, as you say, as everybody says. So what does that mean?
Well, I don't say that they're taking over the world.
Well, someone did. Scoble
definitely said that. And I believe Dave Weiner wrote a post recently that basically talked about how Scoble and Arrington and me all go for that shit, as he put it, which is, you know, flashy conferences with good food. As opposed to some other scenario that is TBD. Seth, did you read any of that? I mean,
I did. I think there was a time when there was some potential for some resistance, but I think that time is over. I think the friction for implementing Facebook like buttons on the web and implementing the open graph is so low, and the web desperately wants to become a social place, and the friction for creating a new kind of social graph or a new kind of address book or a new kind of identity system is so high that I think people have just moved to the next battleground post-Facebook, and we're not sure what that is yet.
but don't you think that...
So, Seth, why does the web, as you, to quote you, say, why does it long to be a social place? And why, I always thought it was social. That was the whole point of it.
It was asynchronously social. Now it wants to be synchronously social. It wants to
What
be...
do those words mean? I don't understand.
It means that the web wants to instantaneously reflect what your friends and what other people that you follow are doing in a real-time basis, and the web was not like that. Pages were sequence-based, and now it's becoming one giant state. Sort of, we're in state. So no matter what web page we're going to, if we do something on one web page, it's going to be reflected to everybody that we know, and if somebody else does something on another web page, we will know about that, and Facebook enables that. And so in the same way, you know, it's different than Google. Google was and is a destination that has tremendous popularity, and maybe, you know, with the Google toolbar it became more persistent, but Google still is a place we have to go to. Facebook has become an operating layer across everything we do on the internet, or it soon will become that way. And so we will all be participating in that. And what was clear to me in the past couple weeks is there's no resistance. And so there's no resistance. And so there's no resistance.
Well,
so
I'm not sure.
So I find this...
Go ahead. Well, actually, not go ahead. I'm not sure I agree with you about that there's no resistance. There's a natural resistance, which is that, you know, given the choice between doing something and not doing anything, most people will choose to not do anything. So, you know... Even
right, and adopting Facebook has become the equivalent of not doing anything.
Well, I mean, that may or may not be true. I have a Facebook account. You know, I'm one of the 500 million. Occasionally people will ping me that I haven't heard from in a long time. And other than that, my daughter uses it a lot more than I do.
But I'm talking less in terms of doing Facebook.com stuff or using your Facebook account as a Facebook activity. I'm talking about it as an identity system. I mean, it is the new cookie, right? And it's a much more powerful cookie, follows you, and makes things easier for you to get more value from internet activities by virtue of your Facebook identity, even if you're not using your Facebook account the way your daughter is.
Well, I disagree. The most virulent expression of identity at the moment, I think, is Twitter. The impressions you leave on Twitter are the quickest way for people to ascertain whether other people are still alive or not. You know, if you, just because you have a pulse doesn't mean that you're doing anything, and people would rather tweet than they would go on Facebook. That's, you know, I'm just talking about in terms of if you were to take all the social signals that were available for the group of people that watch this show or that are on this show, you'd find that there's much more signal on as a result of retweets, Twitter, the sort of cascading follow cloud, etc.
Sure.
Okay. So
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because hardly anyone's on the show and hardly anyone watches it.
well, that's true, but you know, of the people
So what?
that don't watch this show, there's a high degree correlation with people that watch other shows, and of those other shows, you don't see the same kind of
Okay, but I have a question
architecture.
for Seth.
Let me finish what I'm saying. You don't see the same correlation with the kinds of themes of the internet that we find interesting and which tend to dominate on TechMeme and other sites. So there's a certain conversation that's going on that has a certain weight in terms of the establishment of influence and identity on the network, and I think that's strongly weighted at the moment toward Twitter, not toward Facebook. It doesn't mean that Facebook won't get there. It just means that right now, if you say something to Facebook, it goes in and it doesn't come back out. It's a pretty much of a Roach Motel for intent and sentiment analysis. Would you agree with that, Seth?
No,
Okay.
not
well,
necessarily.
Well, give me an
I
example.
think that
What
I
was the
think
last conversation you had on Facebook that registered on the sort of, you know, public cloud?
I think you make a good point, and I think. But what I'm trying to suggest is after to both conferences, it feels like Twitter, Foursquare, etc., are all going to simply be applications on top of the Facebook platform.
Well, I would say that all of them, including Facebook, are going to be applications on top of the iPad platform. I don't see Facebook as being a dominant. You for some reason.
Can I ask Seth
I'm
my
not hearing
question?
you, Seth. Yeah, of course. But I want to make sure that I can hear Seth. Can you talk?
I can talk.
Okay,
Can you hear
thanks.
me?
Yeah. Go ahead, Andrew.
So, Seth, my question is for the, because I think what you're saying is really interesting. I think for me, as someone trying to understand what's happening on the internet, it's fascinating and it very much fits the thesis of my book. So we've got 500 million people on Facebook, right? And I understand what you're saying. Of those 500 million people, are you saying that 100 million, 50 million, 250 million of them will be putting these buttons on and sort of existing on the internet in a social way? How will this work? How will it get translated from the conference to the real world?
So my understanding is there's sort of two really interesting initiatives. One is the object graph, and one is the like button. The object graph suggests that every object in the world that can be an object could be a website, it could be a person, it could be an idea, it could be freedom, it could be a record album, it could be a place in England. Every object is going to have a unique identity or a unique ID in the Facebook open graph, in that object graph, and that's going to get built out over the coming months and the coming years to the point where every single object in the world will have some ID that will be recognized by this graph, and then people can like, as the most fundamental check-in like gesture, an object, and become connected to that object. And that is now going to happen way beyond Facebook.com. That's going to happen across the arteries of the internet and beyond. And insofar as we take our smartphone and we look at a place, through Google goggles or through a barcode scanner, we can like that object and feed that information back to the graph, and that sort of then percolates through the entire graph.
What does that mean? I still don't really understand what it would mean. Let's have an example. If you are an object, right? Seth. So what would that mean for what you do? And
go ahead, ask me a question.
I just asked it.
Ask it again because we couldn't hear it.
Okay, so Seth, you're an object. How will that change the way in which you use the internet and how people think of you when they go on the internet and interact with you?
My sense is that anything that happens related to me, any fans I have, any people that interact with me, any people that like me or don't like me, any people that potentially even search for me, that gets annotated around that object ID, and in order to reference that object, I have to reference the Facebook Open Graph. And whether it's me as a person, or whether it's a band, or whether it's a certain model of a bicycle, that Facebook is, in a way, co-opting this kind of universal taxonomy of objects, so that insofar as we have conversations about them, it's going to be routed back and forth from Facebook. Now, it brings up what I think is the most interesting thing that came out of the Twitter conference, which I don't fully understand, which is the annotation feature. And what I'm trying to kind of warp my mind around is understanding how do Twitter annotations, or the metadata around a tweet that's now going to be carried and transported, relate potentially to information around Facebook objects. I don't know the answer, but I know it's important.
So in the current way, if I'm interested in you, the first thing I do when I go on the internet is I put your name into Google. That's my entry point into today's internet. There has to be a different entry point, right? Is that what you're suggesting? Because it's still not entirely clear what you're saying. I think it's intriguing, but I don't really get what it actually means in concrete terms.
I don't know either. I just know, just as a trope, as a theme, it's important.
Steve, can you help? What will it mean?
Well,
are we still going to use Google? Will it lead us to Facebook?
Well, I'm just letting you hang yourself with, ignoring what I had to say, which was
me. I'm letting Seth. He's the one who's got the theory.
No. I understand what Seth says. Seth is hard to understand in real time, but if you look back at a year later, it explains everything that's actually going on. So I can.
But that's
wait
like
for
you.
Seth,
that's why I'm interested. These are serious questions for me. I'm not making a joke of it. I'm trying still to get you guys to be more concrete, because I know you understand it. You just need to be more concrete.
Well, I think that's a fallacy that we understand it. What we're doing is sort of kicking the tires.
You understand it better than I do.
I'm not so sure. I think that's your shtick, is to pretend not to understand stuff until we can write your book for you. But that's another point. So, but going to the heart of the matter. I was trying to before, but I was shouted down, which is just because there's going to be a ubiquity of a somewhat meaningless in a wave of likes across the internet, which is basically like saying, I like this or I have no comment. Those are the two choices. There's no negative suggestion. Why do you?
Negative is no, but negative is, as you've taught me, Steve, is saying nothing. So you can like something, or you can simply avoid it.
Right, but simply avoiding in the context of the thesis, which is that Facebook's taking over, is tantamount to being a Democrat and losing the election by just going home because you don't think that there's a real choice, or whatever the scenario was prior to Bill Clinton, and then again with Obama. I mean, that saying nothing is a vote for the status quo. And what you're saying is the status quo has now become fully Facebook, and I don't agree with you. I think that the status quo still resides in the cloud that has the most social awareness of influence. And I don't mean influence in terms of getting anything done, just in terms of people paying attention to somebody or to some trend, and using that as a tool to be able to get the attraction of the media and also of the technology vendors. So I think the iPad is a much stronger wave than Facebook is right now. Well, at least I got an expression out of you.
I mean, I'm using the iPad. It's interesting to me. It's great for it's a bigger iPhone, so that I can sit in bed with my son and read Wikipedia entries and show him YouTube videos of Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
You do it together as opposed to it being a solitary experience. I use the iPad watching TV as an augmented, entertainment device. But it doesn't, in the end, it's a hardware device.
You don't sense a certain difference in the way that you're approaching computing and television and reading and all sorts of input mechanisms that you've developed over the years. You don't think that there's like a hard cut to a new reality going on?
What's more interesting to me is my .me, or .mac address, the login that I use for, the iTunes Store, which is potentially the only hedge against the hegemony of Facebook's login. But to me, it's less about the iPad hardware device, and it's more about service experience that I have across the iPad, the iPhone, and my computer. And with Siri, with the acquisition of Siri by Apple, maybe Apple's attempt to federate identity across all of its different services and to create some meaning and some intelligence based on what I use on one device and what I use on another device, and keep me more contained within that ecosystem, so that Facebook doesn't become the modern equivalent of Windows and destroy Apple.
Steve, I still, I asked Seth because he sees Facebook as the future, and you see the iPad. I still don't. I'm not against Apple, and I'd like to have an iPad if someone wants to buy me one. But I don't understand still what you're saying. What is it about the iPad that makes it such a profound product that's going to change the internet?
Are you asking me or asking
Yeah, because you're the one who keeps on saying that. You have this.
I'm not.
Every time you mention the iPad, it's
what's
this sort of mystery, as if it
what
symbolizes the future. But I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, first of all, I went to the Apple store yesterday to get the peripherals for the iPad 3G. And there were a couple of interesting things that happened. First of all, the case, this thing, the official sanctioned Apple case, which has its problems, but still the best thing, is completely sold out. So then I started calling around. It's sold out everywhere. Now, what does that mean? That means that this isn't my mania. This is everybody's mania.
No, it just means it's a popular piece of hardware. It doesn't mean it's going to change everything.
It means that there's a swarm, a wave, a frenzy of buying that's going on right now as people switch over to a new paradigm.
Also, Steve,
This is a huge wave, and we're in the middle of it. I was watching on the iPad yesterday the Bad Sinatra video that we did a few years ago. And, you know, it's me and Mark Benioff talking about, you know, Mark Benioff saying that this is, that the iPhone is just an excuse for a new iPod. He just wants the iPod. He wants the one with the screen. He wants the touch capability. This is the day after Steve Jobs announced the iPhone. So that's 3 or 4 years ago. And to watch the reaction on the part of him and Dan Farber and other people on that video, you see that we were at that moment. It was a little bit more obvious then than it is now. We were in the center of this whirlwind that was just transforming everything about what we knew about computing. That's going on again right now.
But explain why. You still haven't explained why. What will it do? What will it change the way I currently use? Let's use this example of this show. What will it fundamentally change? So maybe the videos of a higher quality, but what is the difference between watching on the iPad?
You can put it anywhere, right? I mean, what Steve is touching on something I don't even think he fully is not getting credit for.
You don't need to sugarcoat it. I don't understand what I'm saying, but I'm probably right.
But Steve, you talked about the case, right? I've had the same issue, which is I got the iPad Wi-Fi version, and I didn't get a case with it. And I have to hold it in my hand or put it flat down on a surface. But what I really want to be able to do is tilt it up so that I can watch it from different angles while I'm standing or seating. Mm-hmm. What the case does, it's not just to protect the screen, is the case kind of folds like this so that you can basically lean or put the iPad anywhere you want. That transforms the computing experience simply because, unlike a laptop and unlike the iPhone, you can put it out in the open around your house or anywhere you are, and it becomes a lean back experience as opposed to a lean forward typing experience. That's the only benefit the TV has always had over computers, and now that benefit is gone.
Did you hear that, Andrew?
So what you're saying then is it's just a better form of television, but what's so what?
Well, I mean, the radio was a better form of yelling across the hall. Things happen and people move to them, and then major industries are created, and then we die.
But then in that sense, then you are positioning yourself in the other camp to people like Doctorow and Jarvis and all these other people who are criticizing this thing because it's not interactive and because it puts the power back in the hands of large media companies.
Yeah, I think they're completely
You're saying that that's true, and that's actually going to change everything.
I think Cory Doctorow's a
brilliant guy. Couldn't you just argue that all it's going to do is go back to where we were, which was large media companies powerfully distributing their content?
It's going to go
on these
forward
devices.
To where we were. There's a difference. This is... I mean, what happened when the Model T came in? What happened when Gutenberg occurred? I mean,
that's anyone can say that. Everyone always says that when they don't know the answer. It's got nothing to do with the Model T. You have to explain why.
I thought that's what Seth and I were doing.
But in 5 years, we've got these devices around our homes that are broadcasting information and entertainment. I still buy Seth's idea that Facebook is more revolutionary, because I think your version is just a hardware revolution. So we walk around the house and we watch Colbert, or we watch the...
It's a software hardware.
What does it mean?
All hardware is software, and all software is enjoined with hardware.
That's mysticism.
To say that,
what will it mean in 5
to say that to say that the iPad is hardware is ignoring 75 or 80% of the work that went into the product, which is software.
Okay, but I don't deny that. But explain to me, you produce this show, Gillmor Gang, which is distributed on the internet and which has an audience, right? There are people out there watching this and commenting on it.
Well, not right now because the sound
laptop. Okay, well they will, or they should do.
Hopefully.
On their laptops and on their desktops. What will the iPad fundamentally alter in that, from the point of view as you as the content producer and them as the audience?
Well, them is us, first of all. And so the extent to which we are altered, the extent to which I prepare for the show has completely changed.
How? Explain why.
I won't get into the graphic details of it, but basically I can look at something anywhere. I can assimilate information in a completely different way. I mean, I have a sort of an ADD kind of a problem with text, which is that I'll start reading it and then I'll sort of I'll start thinking about something, and I'm basically staring at a paragraph, and I literally have to stop what I'm doing, roll back a sentence or two, and start reading again consciously in order to pick up the flow. So in normal terms, with a regular computer screen, that's a real struggle for me, because there are all sorts of distractions. There's the real-time feed coming in, there's the phone, there are arguments in the background with our children. I'm constantly in an interrupted state. With the iPad, it's something completely different. It's almost as though, first of all, it's pleasurable, which is a huge difference. Secondly, it gives me a context where you get into a rhythm of how you consume information. You park certain things because of the interface and the way that it works. By pushing that center button, you basically flip to a screen which manages. It's not like having multiple windows, which drives me crazy and which I'm not really good at. It's more of a iterative serial form of exploration, and the device is it's beautiful to use, beautiful to look at, and right now it's also somewhat more constructive for me in terms of actually creating content, because I can switch to it into the writing mode very quickly. It's a big battle.
How's he doing, Seth? Is he convincing you? Is this big? Is this as big as Facebook?
The fact that he's even thinking about it is interesting.
Because he's a nice guy.
There's something to the fact that the iPad, I think, is a social device. Not just the fact that you use it for social things, but the dimension itself lends itself, unlike the iPhone, which is something that's really private, or your computer that you're huddled over. The iPad is something that reveals itself to other people who are around you. You can use it for personal, private things, but it's inviting, and it's inviting the way that the radio was inviting to the family in the living room.
That's very good. I mean, Tina, when I got the 3G, I passed the original Wi-Fi version over to her, and she's seen me use it for almost a month now. But there's something viscerally different about it. And her comment to me, almost immediately after playing with it for about an hour, was, oh, this is a social device. This is something that I can use to be able to do the stuff that I do on the network. That's a subtle statement, but it's pretty important. I don't know where we're hearing the echo. I'm going to just try and...
Also, what I'm noticing is... my iPhone, I notice, it's my phone, but my kids use it for games and they use it for apps. So it gets, despite itself, it gets handed around. Where the iPad, I think, was actually in some way designed to be passed around the family, right? So it's a communal device, and that's new. And I think what it ushers in is an age where, just like, TVs are on our walls, that we have screens that are connected to broadband Wi-Fi connections, or wireless connections, that can be used and shared by members of a family or members of an office in all sorts of different ways. And that's fundamentally different, I think, profoundly interesting.
Exactly. And the thing is that people keep saying that this is a consumption device, not a creative device. What Seth just said puts the lie to that completely. We went down to McDonald's this morning. free Wi-Fi, coffee, actually get the brain started, sort of. And we took both of our iPads. Very
So you
soon.
said both of your children.
No, we farmed out the children, so they have their own iPads eventually, and they can't see this tape until we can afford it. But here's my point. There's no reason why a month from now, 30% of the people in that place are at Starbucks. Starbucks, for example, they're brain dead about how they do the Wi-Fi thing. You basically have to pass a lie detector test, and you have to go through some sort of configuration in order to be able to get on AT&T so that you can get back on the same network that you were already on to use Wi-Fi. The 3G thing is going to change a lot of that. It's going to accelerate Wi-Fi adoption because it's a lot cheaper in terms of battery power to just turn the radio off and use the Wi-Fi connection. The Wi-Fi connection, if you read Mary Meeker's report on the mobile internet, it states very clearly, if you look at the adoption curve in Japan, for example, and in some of the emerged markets, the build out of Wi-Fi is actually, in spite of what was originally anticipated, it's allowing the carriers to be able to offload from their 3G networks significant traffic, which is allowing them to build out while acquiring users. So they have a major incentive to be able to push Wi-Fi out. I think in New York now, I don't know, Seth, you've been there more recently than I, but there are at least 3 Wi-Fi networks that are public free Wi-Fi that are being built out, right? Correct?
I haven't been there in a while.
Well, are you aware of what I'm talking about? Which is that I believe Comcast and AT&T and one other carrier are all providing. They're all basically using roaming or free roaming to allow people to roam across their Wi-Fi networks now.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
So I really like how you guys are doing this, because I think you're actually saying the same thing, which is really interesting.
And at that point, we ran out of tape. So, well, it's not tape. It's, well, we ran out, and we tried to salvage it, but there's no audio either. Those of you who are listening live during the recording session, of course, will have this memory emblazoned in your minds until the day you die. But as for me, I want to thank Rackspace. And particularly Rob Legess, without whom this show would not be back on the air, and the fabulous TriCaster from NewTek, without which this wouldn't be on video. And Seth Goldstein, thanks for showing up. Thanks for Andrew Keene and his fabulous insights, or lack of them. We'll find out soon. And I want to thank everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.